Everybody, I missed you guys. It's been a week since I've been live. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being interested in factual news, because that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to recap slightly what happened throughout the weekend. We're going to talk about what happened today, of course, globally, because here we focus on global news and any political developments and policy and diplomacy too. But we also going to, of course, talk about national news in United States. First and foremost, I'm based in United States, and especially these days, national policy, I guess lack of diplomacy does affect what happens truly everywhere around the world. So if you are watching, from Europe or anywhere, Middle East, Africa, I posted the maps yesterday, expressing my gratitude for reading, right, our news briefings and newsletters. So I know we do attract everybody around the world, 122 countries. So again, thank you so much for being here. And if you're new, I do hope that you will subscribe to this and also share it so others will have more factual information with the main intention to allow you to make better decisions. All right, let's say hi, Tidy Whitey. Hi, hello. It's been a while, right? Hello, everybody. Almost Thanksgiving. James, yes, James, almost Thanksgiving. And very good point, James. If you're US based or anywhere, let me know. Do you want news on Thursday? Probably not Thursday night, maybe a bit earlier. Do you want news on Friday? Do you want to take off Thursday, Friday? So please let me know so I can, take it from there. Hi, Linda. Good evening. Hello. Factual information, indeed. Hi, Sean. Hello. Good evening, gang. Yes. I missed you last week. I was in YouTube jail a little bit because I did cover the election in New York City. We have a new mayor. Zoran Mamdani has won the election. He also last week visited the White House, and I was accredited and I did cover that event, although I mainly, as you know, focus on global affairs. But this was so trendy and everybody was interested in that, and such a big change for New York and all that kind of stuff. So I did cover it and I did stream it, and again I was accredited, everything was legal, and then suddenly YouTube thought this wasn't permitted, whatever I did, so I was a little bit in jail. So anyway, was okay, but I missed you guys and I'm thankful that you're here. So of course today, what is it, Monday the 24th, and we're talking about everything and anything in between. Of course, yes, the big thing, and obviously I'm from Ukraine, so we're going to talk about Ukraine. We're going to talk about this 28 infamous points. We also going to focus on the newest ish sort of proposition / agreement / framework presented with the help of European Union. Then of course we're going to talk about COP30, right, because the good folks met in of course in Belize and Brazil, to discuss our climate and what they aim to achieve by 2030, and then also sometimes by 2035. And then we're going to talk about G20, because that happened in Johannesburg in South Africa. And even though United States was not represented, we'll again focus on global affairs. And what stood out to me the most, that everything was so happy-go-lucky there. People were cheering, people were happy. You see here Prime Minister Carney with Lula of Brazil, holding hands. Of course, Modi was hugging everybody, and some people were there for the first time, like Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi. And of course, there's a big discussion, right, between China and Japan, and we're going to dive into that as well. So we did miss a couple of things last week. Of course, I did my newsletters, which I hope you do read. There's no paywall. Just please subscribe. Onest, ONEST network.com, and get your factual information there. So let's talk about today. So major headlines. And yes, let's focus on US and Ukraine. So just to recap a little bit. Last week, we got from we thought from the White House, we got this 28 points proposal, which then turns out to be Russian. Turned out it came from Russia because I do speak Russian, certainly, and I saw that I speak, of course, English, and I saw that this is a very much sort of like word by word translation, literal translation from Russian, because some things just don't make sense if you literally translate them into English or any other language. So and it really looked like a wish list, right? Make a wish foundation for Kremlin, right? Because all those 28 points were benefiting one person, and it is Putin, and not necessarily this country, right? His country of Russia, because whatever he does truly benefits him and his ambitions. And all together, right? Why? And this is my main question that I want to raise today, and perhaps you do share my opinion. Why are we pressing the victim to accept some type of terms presented by the aggressor, by the murderer that murders people on the daily basis, right? If we're specific, on a nightly basis, when innocent civilians, Ukrainians, are sleeping in their beds, hoping, truly hoping to wake up next morning, and many of them actually don't these days. They're also using things like FAB, right? Those are missiles that you would use to, to target maybe like a warship or anything of that caliber. Take a look. That's what they're hitting with civilians. And with this in mind, we have this aggressor who writes some type of a make-a-wish letter in the style of Dear Santa. I really, really, really want to do that, right? And those 28 steps up were presented. Nobody talks about legality of those. And that's where I want to start today, because perhaps you did not read the article I put out. I really want to kind of go through. Let me share my screen here for a second. I have this opened, no worries. No. Yes, here we are. I'm not going to take a lot of your time. Let me just check that you see it. Okay, you do. All right. I can put this in full screen so we can focus on that. So what I want us to see here, right? The 28-point peace plan, so to speak, for Ukraine is illegal. Next, we're going to focus on who wrote it, what's the whole drama about it, and all this. But first, it has violations, clear violations of, first and foremost, UN Charter. Specifically, Article 2, right? Part 4, all members shall refrain from the threat of or use of force against territorial integrity or political independence of any state. And then Article 1, peaceful relations must be based on respect for the principle of equal rights and self-determination of peoples. Then there is a Helsinki Final Act, right? The OSCE. Principle 1, sovereign equality and the right to choose and change their security arrangements. Principle 3, the inviolability of frontiers. Principle 4, territorial integrity of states. Then there is Vienna Convention, right, on the law of treaties, Article 52. A treaty is void if obtained by coercion. The expression of a state's consent procured by the threat or use of force shall be without legal effect. And then there's, of course, the Rome Statute. Aggression includes invasion, annexation, and occupation. Article 8. Then there is international human rights law. States may not limit civil rights, political participation, media freedom, elections, or impose discriminatory policies. Several points of the Russian document violate these. And we're not going to waste time, talking about it, but they talk about Ukraine's sovereignty will be confirmed. Okay, but UN Charter already did confirm it, but you make it now conditional, that we're going to chop off 20% of Ukraine and you can keep the rest. Now, this is illegal. Number 2, non-aggression agreement. And those ambiguities, whatever you pronounce it at, are resolved, right? This is another word that was translated from Russian. Non-aggression agreements are legal unless obtained under force, and that's what they're doing here, violating Vienna Convention. Russia will not invade neighboring countries. NATO will not expand further, but Helsinki Final Act Principle 1 says states may choose alliances as they deem fit. And UN Charter says no state may dictate another's alliances, right? Forcing NATO to halt enlargement is illegal. US mediated Russia NATO security dialogue, right? It's legal in theory, but unlawful if made a condition of ending aggression. Ukraine will receive reliable security guarantees. Not unlawful on its own, but unlawful because the plan restricts Ukraine military, right? And then there is this thing, and please focus here because we're going to come back to that very soon. Ukraine's armed forces will be limited to 600,000. Clear violation, UN Charter, Article 51, nothing shall impair the inherent right of self-defense. Limiting troop levels under threat constitutes coercion, Vienna Convention, Article 52. Now, Ukraine will enshrine in its constitution that it will not join NATO. NATO will adopt a provision stating Ukraine will not be admitted. Again, violating Helsinki, UN Charter, Vienna Convention, right? So you get the drill here. NATO will not deploy troops in Ukraine. Again, dictating military arrangements of another state, violating sovereign equality, Helsinki, Part 1. European NATO forces will be stationed in Poland, forcing Poland to host troops violates Poland's sovereignty, and Helsinki again. U.S. security guarantees with political conditions, legal only if voluntary, but it's not. Ukraine may apply for EU membership. Well, thank you. But is that news? Global reconstruction package. Reconstruction itself is legal, but using reconstruction funds to pressure political concessions is coercive, right? Now, Russia will be reintegrated. Sanctions relief discussed. They're going to come back to G8. Sanctions may be lifted, but conditional on illegal territorial concessions. Again, bargaining with stolen territory, violating UN Charter, UNGA resolutions on non-recognition of annexation. Frozen Russian assets will be restructured. And then somehow they decide to restructure it between Russia and United States, allowing United States to profit off of it. And then there is a joint US-Ukraine-Russia working group. Okay, well, it's legal, but is Ukraine voluntarily participating in it or no? What I want to also focus on, Ukraine will remain non-nuclear state. This was already decided in Budapest. Exactly then when United States, alongside UK, alongside Russia itself, promised to protect Ukraine's sovereignty because Ukraine gave up nuclear capabilities. I mean, what can you wish for more than that? Those were signatures. Those were presidents. There's President Clinton. It wasn't somebody who's bala, really, really wanting Nobel Peace Prize, but right? Reputable. People were signing. We still have photos. These folks are still alive. And yet, here we are. So, believing that some type of signature will represent some type of, security for Ukraine. We've been there, done that, got bombed for it. And if we allow ourselves to violate those rules that our grandfathers, fathers, however your age is, they fought for and died for, then we're violating all this, rule of law, as we call it, right? Because if we violate UN Charter, we violate Helsinki document, if we violate Vienna Convention, what else do we have? If we start questioning the very simple fact as borders, well, the next thing, China will be very interested in Outer Manchuria. They're already calling Vladivostok and some, Chinese name on their own maps. That is very interesting trade for Putin, right? China will be very interested in Taiwan. That's why this whole debacle was Japan. How dare you, right? We'll dive into that. And then what happens to Baltic states? Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, what happens to them? Can they defend themselves against Russia without NATO's help? Can we count that Article 5? And I keep explaining on the nightly basis when I'm live that Article 5 represents 3 opportunities to veto it. All the NATO states have to decide that aggression happened and was premeditated, not accidental. Then they have to decide that response is needed. And thirdly, they have to decide on the response itself. So do you think Trump will really follow all those steps to protect Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia? He's really gonna. You have troops there, from Canada. Canadian troops will be protecting. No brainer. But we kind of use the equipment from United States. Equipment that comes with preconditions. Like people with pre-existing conditions, this comes with conditions. You always have to ask Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania Avenue, and hope that you will find that person in a good mood. Sort of like Mamdani found him, right? That he will actually allow you to defend yourself using whatever you paid for and bought from the Washington, D.C. crowd. Whatever you buy, F-35, F-16, choose your poison. You have to have a green light from Washington, D.C. that you can use it against Russia. If you want to sell it to somebody, or maybe gift it, again, Trump, in this case, Trump has to green light it for you. You see how many loopholes we have here that do depend on the mood of somebody who's been very moody. Somebody who doesn't really care where those agreements do come from. So that's what we have today. A major investigation by The Economist reveals profound disagreements now inside the Trump administration over the emerging Ukraine peace plan. Now, I think we can agree that although we didn't go through all the 28 points, this is not a peace plan. This is plan for surrender. And if Ukraine wanted to surrender, why didn't Ukraine do it in 2022 without losing about 1 million people? So, according to reporting, it was Vice President J.D. Vance who pushed the initial hardline document. That document, this one here, right? Okay, so I leave it up here because we're going to cruise through it. So, Vance personally called President Zelensky to outline the terms, while his university friend, at this point he was appointed in December of this year, Army Secretary Daniel Driscoll. Now he's special envoy to handle this whole Russia situation. J.D. Vance's roommate in college delivered the same message face-to-face in Kiev. What was the message? Then Marco Rubio, right, Secretary of State, simultaneously launched his own effort to salvage the proposal, right? So essentially he was blindsided. What had happened was that Witkoff, with a background in real estate, but not certainly diplomacy, who doesn't need a translator to go and talk to FSB agent Putin, well, he is negotiating. Kushner is negotiating, right? The son-in-law with absolutely no position in this White House. He's negotiating. Witkoff is negotiating. Driscoll here is negotiating. And all of this is sort of goes together with Secretary of State / National Security Advisor / is he handling also USAID or USAID? Do we still have it? Who knows? Who cares at this point? So Rubio has to co-sign. So now we know that Axios reporter got this document, the 28 points document, straight from Kremlin. Because Axios signed a 3-day collaboration agreement with Kremlin. They got this stuff, right? Whether in Russian or maybe they used Google Translate to put it up in English, but it certainly sounded very Russian. They got that. They told Trump that Kremlin approved a deal. Trump, without reading, said, I endorse it. And so this was endorsed. And then Rubio was confronted with, okay, there's agreement. You did endorse it. And he started saying, well, some senators called him up and he started saying, well, I've never seen it. I don't know. I didn't write it. Of course, this spread out very fast on Saturday. Everybody was shocked. Oh my God, what happened? So then Rubio goes on television because now at this point he's instructed to clean up on aisle one. So him with the wash mop and everything is showing up on television saying that no, we wrote it together, we wrote it listen, fantastic. Next day they all show up in Geneva where they now are facing, now this is again Witkoff and Rubio and Kushner and all this, right? They're now facing the Ukrainian delegation without Zelensky. Then when the talks begin, Zelensky is on the phone listening to the whole discussion. And so let us get through what happens there, right? So essentially they showed up and said, quote now from a source, right? The US delegation said, if you don't support the plan, then you're on your own with the Europeans. We'll stop everything, both arms shipments and intelligence. We'll cut everything off. Now, mind you, we just spoke about actually European Union. Wasn't there Mark Rutte? We're going to see him today and hear from him in a second. Whole 24 beautiful seconds, how he endorses Trump's efforts here. Wasn't it him who pushed Europeans to essentially raise their investment, right? Or donation or whatever into NATO defense up to 5% of their own GDP in some countries, the Balkans, right? And Baltic states, they invest exactly 5% or even more at this point. So, to do what? Where does this money go? It goes to buy those arms from Pentagon. So you say, well, I paid you. You haven't even delivered it to me yet. And then you say, well, if the victim is not agreeing to the wish list of the murderer and invader, then you will stop arms shipments that I paid for. You will stop sharing intelligence with me. Meanwhile, it's not where he's rigging up and just texting some intelligence. You're part of a global community, so you want to get out of it. Why? Because you are clearly on the side of the murderer. And I'm not putting words into anybody's mouth. I'm just trying to understand what happened, right? You force the victim to agree to the murderer, the neighbor. Meanwhile, all this crew, from Rubio to Johnson, right, they all tell you, love thy neighbor. But if your neighbor is murdering you, shall we still love him? Looks like it. So now Ukraine is facing this. And as a precursor, right, to push Ukraine to accept the deal, they use this recent revelation about the corruption that happened in Ukraine, where $100 million were stolen from the electric grid and all that kind of stuff. Okay, fine. But can we separate it? Nobody is endorsing corruption in Ukraine. Nobody is denying this either. But do you think that people, 20% of territory has to be now donated to Russia? And in that 28 point right here, I want to show it to you because that is really important. Hope to never see this document again, but whatever. Here, 21b, freezing lines, demilitarized zones, right? Ukrainian withdrawals, recognition of Russian-controlled regions, and it will be recognized, as they mentioned here, by United States, which all violate, this is what I mean, violate the same foundational principles: prohibition on annexation, prohibition of coercion, sovereign equality. Any agreement forcing Ukraine to surrender territory is void under Vienna Article 52. And then they continue with Ukraine will hold elections. Conducting elections during war in occupied territory is illegal. This goes against Ukrainian constitution, but also forcing election under occupation violates ICCPR Article 25. Right? Then they also squeezed here full amnesty for wartime actions. So now let's just call it grievances that Russia kills people on the daily. Let's just neglect Rome statutes, right? War crimes, crimes against humanity, aggression cannot be forgiven, right? Geneva Conventions, no amnesty for grave breaches. Well, it's legally impossible. And then finally, agreement will be binding, monitored by a peace council, chaired by Trump personally. No issue with oversight body. Okay, he wants to oversee it. But an agreement made under all of this crap is void. And then there's ceasefire that takes effect after withdrawals, not legal if conditioned on territorial surrender. So in this case, and I do understand, why Rubio and company freaked out, United States is clearly on the side of the aggressor and will be monitoring that the victim will be following aggressor's demands. Don't hold your breath. I'll jump forward. The aggressor did not agree with whatever they even drafted, which makes me think that all of this was to portray the White House exactly what it is. Circus that travels. Now, sources speaking with RBC Ukraine said that the first day's American rhetoric was unusually harsh, although the tone softened somewhat the following day. Still, the message was clear. Washington expects Kiev to endorse a plan whose origins it cannot explain and whose content Ukraine rejects. The Washington Post underlined the gravity. The threat to halt U.S. aid is extremely serious. Meanwhile, Ukraine is still buying U.S. weapons, a dynamic many in Europe view as increasingly contradictory, to put it nicely. And then, ultimately, now we end up with two documents. Because yesterday, when they met in Geneva, there were 3 documents released. Who knows what's true at this point? There was one document, and I put it up. It's 24 points, not 28, but 24. It's not as catastrophic as those 28 points, but it does ultimately reduce. And if I combine all 3 documents that were sort of leaked yesterday, it does reduce the forces of Ukraine to 800,000 soldiers, not 600,000 troops as here, which, as I just showed you, is illegal. It also discusses Ukraine not joining NATO, again, illegal. It also concedes territories, again, illegal. So if this is indeed something that European Union and European leaders came up with, then Europe is what? Violating its own laws? And as I mentioned, once you do that, then the party begins. My hope is that actually President of European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, who was in Johannesburg for G20 and addressed this issue, I hope she sticks to what she mentioned, because she actually spoke exactly about the laws that I just enlisted here. So take a look.
Ukraine has been at the heart of many discussions over the past days. Any credible and sustainable peace plan should first and foremost stop the killing and end the war while not sowing the seeds for a future conflict. We have agreed on the main elements necessary for a just and lasting peace and Ukraine's sovereignty. And let me highlight 3 of them. First, borders cannot be changed by force. Second, as a sovereign nation, there cannot be limitations on Ukraine's armed forces that would leave the country vulnerable to future attack and thereby also undermining European security. Third, the centrality of the European Union in securing peace for Ukraine must be fully reflected. Ukraine must have the freedom and sovereign right to choose its own destiny. They have chosen a European destiny. It starts with the country's reconstruction, its integration into our single market and our defense industrial base, and ultimately joining our union. We will continue our work together with Ukraine, our member states, the coalition of the willing and the United States to make real progress towards peace. What is important is that...
Right? So let's hope we stick to that. Yes, she mentions coalition of the willing. Yes, she mentions United States, because what? If you stop mentioning United States, then United States is fully embracing Russia, right? And so ultimately we have this weird agreement. And then the next framework is on security guarantees for Ukraine. It's the second document. It's modeled on NATO's Article 5 and includes three primary components. So here, if Russia launches another offensive, the US president gains authority to deploy American troops and intelligence services. Why am I laughing a little bit? Because we kind of can agree that Trump will not help Ukraine or Europe at this point. So, NATO and key European nations, France, the UK, Germany, Poland, and Finland, would commit to act jointly with the US. But here's the funny part: the guarantees would last only 10 years. Wall Street Journal confirmed Monday that Washington is prepared to offer long-term commitments, but only for a decade. And here I want to mention one thing that was pointed out to me, and I was asked to mention it, because if whatever they agree here upon is not confirmed and voted on by the House and the Congress, well, the Congress itself, right? The Senate, the House, then all this is on the level of an executive order by Trump. So if you replace Trump, let's say, with Vance, all this goes into shitter where it came from, right? It's not really binding. We are violating the Budapest Agreement so freely. I mean, there's nothing, right? We're not even issuing executive orders. Meanwhile, US also signed it. Yes, Russia is violating it, but US has also signed it to protect Ukraine's sovereignty, and US is now at least a co-creator of an agreement that forces Ukraine to give up territory. Hence, it is violating what it has signed. So then my question is, and this is my sincere request to our European colleagues, to question even this 10-year promise. Is it bypassed to the next presidents, if we still will end up with any? But certainly we would end up with Vance one way or another. So would he be, or right? Because it's personally overseen by Trump. It's personally promised for 10 years. It's not backed up by the Congress. So what is the situation here? That's certainly not how the laws work in the United States. And so based on some pictures, you kind of can see the mood that happened there. So you see here, this is Umerov. He is former head of defense, right? Sort of equivalent to Hegseth. Now he's head of National Security Council in Ukraine. He also broke a pen during this negotiation. And why all that is because Ukrainian outlets reported that negotiations in Geneva stalled over two central issues. One, demand that Ukraine withdraw its armed forces from Donbas, and Ukraine's path toward NATO membership. Now, meanwhile, Russia is struggling to occupy Donbass since 2014. So gifting that to them is like a dream come true to the moth called Vladimir Putin. These issues were escalated to the level of direct Zelensky-Trump meeting, which may occur as early as this week or next. But then we got the confirmation that nothing is planned for this week. So Zelensky and Trump were not meeting this week. Again, allegedly, anything can happen in this situation, but this is as for now. Despite this, negotiators made incremental progress on future Ukrainian armed forces levels, again, illegal. The status of Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, again, it's on the occupied zone. It will be, energy will be shared 50-50 with occupier Russia, again, illegal. Prisoner exchange frameworks, okay, good. Procedures for returning convicted individuals, okay. All of these have now been revised following consultations. I would also love to mention that where is the framework on the stolen children? Because what we know of is 20,000 stolen children. Are there more? But here's Russia. Russia reacts with denial. First, Moscow's first public response was predictable deflection. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said, "We do not know whether the head of Kiev regime," they call Kiev a regime, Very ironic coming from Kremlin. We don't know if he will come to Washington, what exactly will be discussed, or what text has been drafted in Geneva. I do have a video. You will have to be reading translations. Take a look.
В опубликованном СМИ тексте европейских контрпредложений на американский мирный план пункт 7 звучит следующим образом. Присоединение Украины к НАТО зависит от консенсуса членов Альянса, что довольно резко контрастирует с американской формулировкой. Вот
Well, it's not American wording you cherish. It was your wording. So hours later, Russian officials reversed their course. According to Bild, Russia now rejects all compromises and refuses to deviate from its maximalist demands. Putin aide Yuri Ushakov signaled that the US will likely reach out to Russia soon to discuss the document, citing many speculations swirling around the plan. In fact, US delegation with Driscoll and Witkoff is traveling to Kremlin this week. Meanwhile, Europe issues firm warnings. Foreign Affairs Committee chairs from 20 European parliaments issued a joint statement emphasizing that a just and lasting peace cannot be achieved through concessions to aggressor. Their message is international law, not appeasement, must guide the process. Hallelujah, Mazel Tov. Thank you. Finally, it took us 3 days to get here. Thank you. And I really would love European leaders to start speaking up. You have to flood the zone, as we call it here, because this is what, everything is so Americanized. We used to say it in Europe when everybody was wearing jeans. Oh, everything is Americanized. No, it's our social media comes, or our meaning global social media comes from US. The algorithms are at this point controlled by US. You have to flood the zone. You have to see how MAGA did it. You have to see how, in this case, Mamdani did it. You have to flood the zone. I understand that our DNA, the European DNA, is very different. You speak when you have something to say, especially when you're a diplomat, especially when you represent a government. But you have to play by these rules. Even if you don't enjoy it, even if you don't like it, find people who are skilled to flood the zone. You have to speak up. Your life is at stake. US, as Trump points it out on a daily basis across the ocean. And in fact, it is. And that is what stops Putin from having better ideas. Now, Verkhovna Rada, which is a parliament in Ukraine, and their chairman, Ruslan Stefanchuk, outlined Ukraine's formal red lines. 1, no legal recognition of occupation. No restrictions placed on the armed forces. No veto on alliances, including NATO and the EU. European and Ukrainian interests cannot be decided without them. Ukraine will not yield its language, faith, or identity. Now, Zelensky issued a statement saying today, we all continue working with partners, especially the United States, and look for compromises that strengthen but not weaken us. Pretending that aggression can simply be overlooked is dangerous. So Spilne, which is a Ukrainian outlet, reported that no Zelensky-Trump meeting is planned for this week. But what I want to point out, right, because we got to draw a bottom line here. During all this debacle, the aggressor, Russia, has not been asked or pressured to make a single concession. A single concession. United States, with the Kremlin wish list, right, demands the victim to accept, right? Take different poses. I'm a rapist. Now, take different poses. I want you to take different poses. And I want somebody across the ocean to control which poses you take, because you better take the poses I like at the frequency that I like. And when I say jump, you only ask how high. Okay? That's one. And then you have European agreement, which is, again, like, okay, well, you really want that? Okay, let's do less of what you want. Let's do less poses. Let's slow down the frequency. But nobody has asked the aggressor to concede one thing. Why don't you start any agreement with the kind or not so kind request to withdraw from Ukraine. Let them negotiate with you. At this point, Russia dictates, Europe pushes back. Russia dictates, Europe pushes back. Why don't you push them so they go back? You know they cannot pay their own armed forces as of today. This was announced by Kremlin. They are in the shitter. They have invited their North Korean friends to join the cannon fodder. Today, they arrived to die on behalf of Russians. They are not doing really well. Stop being polite. I understand this is the DNA. I share it. It's very difficult to be in the United States as a European because you're freaking polite and you're realistic. The last thing you need to be today in the United States is realistic if you really want to achieve something. Look at Wall Street. Look at AI bubble. Look at anything. The last thing you need is to be polite and realistic. That's a certain way to be broke as a joke in the United States. Unfortunately, it hasn't been always this way, but this is where we are. And here comes Mark Rutte, the head of NATO. What do you think is the messaging today? Pushing Russia to concede, putting Russia into place, putting America into place for just adopting a Russian aggressor's wish list without even reading it. Here's Rutte.
What I've seen over the last 10 months, that the President, Trump and his team, so the Rubio and of course Hexat and Witkoff, they're all really working extremely hard to get this war solved. And it is good that there is a plan on the table, which was discussed, as you know, yesterday in Geneva. It was a very successful meeting between Ukraine and the US side, and they will take it forward.
As Dutch people say, gadverdamme. Okay. On a stake. Washington was handed a document effectively written by Russia. Instead of reviewing it, the administration rushed to force a signature, seemingly to help Trump justify his demand for Nobel Peace Prize. Officials who learned of the document at the last moment scrambled to impress him. The chaos reflects a breakdown in basic statecraft. It is a disgrace. You can agree, you can disagree. Again, this is my personal take. I always separate facts from my personal takes. And now European reactions. In Lithuania, President Nausėda urged the EU to adopt its 20th sanctions package quickly, finalize the reparations loan, and maintain pressure on Russia. I just said nobody freaking said. Yes, they do. But the media in United States and the media all over and the social media, because it's controlled by American algorithms and TikTok by Chinese algorithms. And the last thing they're interested in is to show what Europe is saying. Please understand it. And they're not flooding the zone. They say it in one interview, hoping this will be heard, but it is not. Lithuania is next on this list. Lithuania is also the one that is paying a lot into NATO, Rutte. How dare you to say whatever you just said? They say it, but we don't hear it. All we hear today, President Trump will come up with the new Trump health plan. 30 seconds later, there is no health plan. Oh, delay, 2 weeks. It's always freaking 2 weeks. Nobody talks about it. Nobody's releasing Epstein files. Nobody is doing it. We're talking about now bombing Venezuela. We're going to talk about it in a second. Nobody is bringing any information. It is about Europe. My newsletter is read by editors of right-wing publications. I know it. You speak to me. Why don't you show, and also left-wing publications, why don't you show what Europe says? It is war rightfully, as you mentioned, in Europe. You only mention Europe when you want to say that we don't want to use our taxpayer money, which we're not using, by the way, to help Ukraine. It's their war. It's across the goddamn ocean. You only show Europeans when they commit this pilgrimage to Washington, D.C. to lick somebody's behind. That's the only way you mention. Why don't you say what Europe says now? Have you heard it anywhere on television? Maybe I'm blind and deaf and whatever. Please point it out. I'll be the first to correct myself. But I don't see it. Again, President of Lithuania says he urged the EU to adopt 20th sanction package quickly, finalize the reparation loan, and maintain pressure on Russia. He reaffirmed that Ukraine should become an EU member by 2030. Here's Germany. Chancellor Friedrich Merz firmly rejected the idea of allowing Russia back into G7, even if Trump insists. Quote, I don't see any willingness among the 6 other G7 members, apart from United States, to bring Russia back. This is an interview with Deutsche Welle. Continued, the sovereignty of this country must not be jeopardized. Russia's war is a deep threat to Europe's political order. End quote. He said the West must determine which parts of the plan can be mutually agreed upon, but admitted the challenge is extremely complicated. Finland. Finnish Defense Minister Antti Kaikkonen, sorry if I butcher names, said Russians may be bypassing the property ban by purchasing shares in Finnish housing companies. Remember I did a deep dive on BlackRock and all of them like owning our real estate market, right? The loans. Same story here with the Finnish housing companies, right? And Russians are buying shares in those companies, indirectly bypassing and now owning apartments in the capital region. Several buyers have little or no income, yet hold multiple properties. Kaikkonen warned that while isolated purchases are not dangerous, concentrated ownership by a hostile player would pose a serious threat, because you don't know who those people are. Is it your Russian government? Are those FSB agents? You don't know. Meanwhile, talking about Venezuela, Russian Colonel General Makarevich, remember he blew up the Nova Kakhovka dam that killed 200 people when it flooded. Remember last year in Ukraine? Oh, 2 years already, 2023. He now has been deployed to Venezuela to lead Moscow's advisory mission. Russia has used the Trump administration's posture to deepen its foothold in the Western Hemisphere and bring Maduro closer into its orbit. Now, U.S. military buildup also, in response, intensified around Venezuela. I'm sorry to say, but we have to watch Fox News because Fox News gets all the information from Pentagon exclusively. So here we go.
Should President Trump order strikes against the Maduro regime, there's plenty of firepower in the Caribbean to do it, with about 30% of all deployed American warships, including the aircraft carrier Gerald R. Ford, now on station. There are over 200 Tomahawk cruise missiles in theater aboard destroyers and U.S. Marines aboard the USS Iwo Jima and other amphibs in the Ready Group. Now, ahead of Thanksgiving, the U.S. military's top officer, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Raisin Kane, arrived in Puerto Rico yesterday to meet the forces who are part of Operation Southern Spear. So with General Kane in the region, we'll have to see if Secretary Hegseth follows suit ahead of...
Nothing says Happy Thanksgiving as bombing Venezuela. Roughly 30% of all deployed American warships, including USS Ford, are now in the region. Over 200 Tomahawk missiles are positioned aboard U.S. destroyers. U.S. Marines are on USS Iwo Jima. Southcom is restricting leave for military personnel over Thanksgiving and Christmas ahead of possible strikes in 10 to 14 days. The U.S. has designated Nicolas Maduro as a member of a foreign terrorist organization. Seeing is believing. Here you go. So, why? Because that gives Trump broad executive authority to launch strikes without congressional approval. Yes, he's going to have just 60 days to do so, but do you think he needs more for Venezuela? In another show of force, 3 B-52 bombers with refueling aircraft headed today toward Caribbean for operations near Venezuelan airspace. Several airlines decided to reroute their flights. Some flights were actually coming close to Caracas and they had to turn around, and they are currently on a 72-hour notice. FAA issued some type of directive saying that within 72 hours they have to cancel and reroute their flights. This is still announced up until February 2026. Now, meanwhile, Trump today talked to Xi Jinping. This is a readout from China. Xi Jinping described the Busan meeting, this was in South Korea, that happened as a turning point towards steady and positive China-US relations. He restated China's position on Taiwan, saying Taiwan's return to China is an integral part of the post-war international order. He emphasized that China and the US fought shoulder to shoulder against fascism, and that depending on the outcome, defending the outcome of World War II remains essential. Now, what do you think Trump said? This is according to the White House. Trump replied that the US understands the importance of the Taiwan issue for Beijing. China's foreign ministry, meanwhile, seized on recent Japanese statements accusing Tokyo of crossing a red line by signaling readiness for military response to an attack on Taiwan. Beijing then froze preparations for China, Japan, and South Korea trilateral summit, saying conditions were not right. Japan's Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi clarified that Japan will never ever accept threats against Taiwan or Japan. Ultimately, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi responded that Japan is hollowing out the One China policy. And here's something that I started recently, moments, right? Here's some moments where we watch clips or I read out quotes that sort of were remarkable today. Coming back to US soil, but still connected to China. Remember, China stopped buying soybeans. And then after or before they in fact met with Xi Jinping, or Trump met with Xi Jinping, China placed a very limited order, and then Trump praised it as a big change, right? And rejuvenation of this relationship and yada, 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 right? Now, China pledged to buy 12 million tons of US soybeans by January. So far, they bought 332,000 tons, promised 12 million, bought for now 332,000 tons. January. Today is November 24th, right? Brooke Rollins, right, the Secretary of Agriculture, when pressed, admitted, your point is kind of right. We got a significant way to go. And here's how she was admitting it. Take a look.
This, and tell me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that you said in the White House, it said that China was going to buy 12 million metric tons of soybeans from the United States by January. We're now just about a month and a half away from that. They have, according to the USDA report, only made two big purchases, and they total, in total, 332,000 metric tons. How is that pledge, if that is a real pledge, and China has not confirmed that pledge, going to be made in that quick a time?
Andrew, thank you. We're actually about 1.5 million metric tons, but your point is still salient, right? That 1.5 million of 12 million, we've got a significant way to go. I know they are inking the deal this week or next week. Again, every sign is their commitment remains true that they.
Okay. Meanwhile, Maduro was dancing at a rally. Remember last month, he was encouraging Americans to stop the war, stop the fight, peace, peace, remember? He made a song out of it, and he danced to the same song with U.S. students, or for U.S. students, urging supporters to build a dialogue. And
no crazy going on. Studying the United States, listen to me. The people in the United States that listen to me, dialogue, yes. Peace, Yes. Respect. Yes. War. Student. Listen to me. War. War, no. Never war.
But then we talked about Kremlin drafting the 28 points. We also hear from Yulia Navalny, right? Supposed to be opposition leader, but she lives in New York and raises certainly money for it, but doesn't oppose anything, seemingly. Recently, she advocated for Russians to have, travel to European Union, was very offended that now they're not allowed multi-entry, and every single time they have to explain why the hell they want to go to European Union. Okay, this aside, what do you think Russians think about the plan? Do you think they support Putin's 28-point plan that certainly pushes Ukraine, the victim, to surrender after those killings, mass killings? Do you think they speak against Putin? Here's folks in Moscow. Certainly you will have to read the translation, but please enjoy their answers.
Хотим на условиях России.
Какие условия самые важные, на ваш взгляд?
Чтобы Россия победила. Чтобы все было, как наш президент скажет.
Конечно, очень хочется, чтобы закончилось это все. Во-первых, эти все репрессии против русских на Украине должны прекратиться. Вот, ну и потом, я считаю, в рамках наших завоеваний границы. Украинцев мы уважаем, да. Но, как говорится, хотим оставаться при своих. Они должны и русских уважать в ответ. А то получается игра в одни ворота.
Понимание того, что мир будет долгосрочным, что нам перестанут угрожать, нас перестанут притеснять и гнобить, обкладывать санкциями. И вообще, считаю, что мы люди второго сорта. Разве это так?
You're not second sort. You are waste of oxygen. You do this to civilians. So whenever somebody tells you that Russian people are good people and it's Putin's war, they're always good people somewhere. Now, Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkina said, if borders can be changed by force, none are safe. Thank you. EU lawmaker Reinier van Lanschot said, we've let a war criminal drag us into a boxing match and made him the referee. He spoke on that in European Parliament today. And here's German Member of Parliament Norbert Röttgen, who said, if the US sells out Ukraine, this would mean the destruction of the West as we know it. Take a look.
If it were to happen, we would live in another world. If America, for business interests, switches sides and rewards a brutal, illegal war of attrition, and would sell out Ukraine as a major European country and European security at the same time. This would be a different world, and it would imply the destruction, I would say, of the institutions of the West, and I would say the West as such.
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, she spoke at the G20, calling Russia's war unjustified and urging just peace.
The unjustified Russian war of aggression against Ukraine, and I want to say that Italy is ready to work with its European and American partners to reach a just peace.
There was a report that Prime Minister Meloni and also President Stubb of Finland were headed to Washington, D.C. To talk to Trump. Those certainly are his favorite people out of European Union. So let's see if this will manifest. Certainly they were flying from South Africa. So I haven't heard them arriving or being seen there. So let's see if this is a rumor or in fact a fact. Speaking of Prime Minister Meloni, she met with the Prime Minister of Japan, Takaichi, for the first time. They had a very warm welcome. Take a look.
イタリアのメローニ首相ら各国首脳と積極的にコミュニケーションを取る高市総理。
Meanwhile, Italy's defense minister said we are under attack, referring to Russian hybrid warfare. And about Canada, I want to set something straight here, because certainly Prime Minister Carney, I'm not speaking on his behalf in any way or form or fashion, I'm not even Canadian, but some things are being taken out of context. So he was asked whether his spoke was Trump, to which he replied, and I mean, look, he was answering questions on trade deals, which from Saudi Arabia or from UAE to India to Colombia to Finland, he was talking about different trade deals. And then ultimately, out of blue, he was asked whether his spoke was Trump who wasn't at G20, Trump who has issues certainly with Canada and no solutions, to present as such. And to which he replied, who cares? It's detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. But at this point, it matters. At G20, we had the certain deals, and I put it also in yesterday's and also today's newsletter. So take a look. But I want to show you this clip so you can kind of understand how this was cut by CBC, a bit out of context. Take a look.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. I mean, the sort of, comme j'ai dit, nous sommes très occupés. Nous sommes très, très occupés avec l'avenir du Canada. Nous sommes maîtres chez nous et avec les nouveaux partenariats. Et il y aura des conversations, oui, avec le président et moi, probablement dans les prochaines 2 semaines. Mais on attend I'm always happy to, sorry, I slipped into French because I anticipated the en français thing. I look forward to speaking to the president soon, but I don't have a burning issue to speak with the president about right now. When America wants to come back and have the discussions on the trade side, we will have those discussions. I'm going to answer a potential question here, and then I'll pass back, which is...
Stop doing this. Why are you adding oxygen to something that is from the past? Just an ask to Canadian friends. I know I'm overstaying my welcome, but quick national news here in U.S. The White House is preparing to unveil a new health policy framework that would extend ACA insurance premium subsidies for 2 more years, but it was postponed again. Who knows if that will manifest itself. Millions rely on these subsidies, which expire December 31st. State officials say enrollment is falling sharply by as much as 33% as Americans brace for 2026 premium spikes that could more than double. And Levitt today, I didn't even cut out that clip because it just makes no sense. She's like, Trump will come up with something fabulous. Meanwhile, there are millions of people in the United States with pre-existing conditions whose existence relies upon taking medication on a daily basis that they will not otherwise be able to afford. Are you going to kill people, or are you going to move your ass and do something what you were elected for? Trump's federal workforce reduction is exceeding expectations. 317,000 employees will be cut this year. 668,000 have been hired. 317,000 employees will be cut this year. The EPA approved a new pesticide containing PFAS, forever chemicals, right? To be used on crops like lettuce, broccoli, and potatoes. A federal judge dismissed criminal charges against former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James, ruling that Trump's handpicked prosecutor / beauty queen was unlawfully appointed. The U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis canceled its Q3 GDP release because of the government shutdown, which ended a week ago. Trump declared via tweet, naturally, this tariff power will bring America national security and wealth. Those opposing us are serving hostile foreign interests. Just prepare for higher prices. Federal agencies continue facing turmoil. FBI Director Kash Patel used SWAT teams to protect his girlfriend and frequently flew on government jets. The Federalist Society is split after Trump criticized judges he himself appointed. Marjorie Taylor Greene abruptly resigned, as we know, right, a few days after her pension kicks in, citing betrayal by Trump and death threats from his supporters. The Trump administration ordered a sweeping vetting review of all refugees admitted under Biden administration, and temporary legal status for Myanmar citizens in the U.S. will end on January 26. The administration claims Myanmar has improved due to the junta's planned elections. The State Department approved $200 million sale of Navy multi-brand terminals to the UK. Meanwhile, Amazon announced up to $50 billion in new AI and supercomputing investments for U.S. government clients. The Pentagon threatened to recall Senator Mark Kelly to active duty to prosecute him for alleged seditious behavior. All he did was participate in a video, among other 5 lawmakers who called upon the U.S. Army to remember that they swore their allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and not the president himself, in case he were to make illegal demands, right, or set illegal demands. Quick global news: the U.S. demanded the EU balance its tech regulations in exchange for steel and aluminum tariff relief. EU infamously is fighting against Twitter shitter and the algorithms taking force, right, and enforcing whatever rules they create and are paid for by advertisers within European Union sphere. So now Trump administration and Trump himself is tying this regulation to the reduction in tariffs, specifically on steel and aluminum. So, I mean, isn't that coercion? Like, it's the same principle everywhere. It's not just Ukraine. It's everyone. This is the style, right? So Prime Minister Carney of Canada highlighted new Canada-France cooperation on AI, critical minerals, and defense, and announced intensified trade negotiations with Brazil and Mercosur. Colombia's President Gustavo Petro responded to U.S. allegations of drug trafficking. Quote, "If you want to put me in orange jumpsuit, try it, but this nation won't kneel." China rapidly repaired relations with Germany after an earlier conflict over critical minerals. Russia openly admitted that the Dmitriev-Witkoff plan was Russian-designed from the beginning. 4 Democratic U.S. senators warned that lax sanction enforcement is allowing China to buy discounted Russian LNG. UK and Canadian P-8 Poseidon aircraft at Iceland's Keflavik base continue patrolling Russian naval activity, those so-called shadow fleets. Russian war channels confirmed that the arrival of North Korean troops did happen in Ukraine, Gulaipole. Now, COP30 global climate talks ended ultimately without referencing fossil fuels, which are actually the main reason of global warming. Now, China practiced jamming Starlink over an area the size of Taiwan. They openly discussed that they will own Taiwan by 2027. Now, Trump understands China's position. That's at least what we hear. Israel conducted strikes in Gaza that killed at least 20 people. Brazilian police arrested former President Bolsonaro over fears that he might flee under house arrest. He was trying to take off his brace, and then he mentioned that now he's taking medicine and that makes him cuckoo crazy, and so ultimately they wanted to arrest him. German breweries face mass closures as young Germans now abandon beer. And China plans to launch Shenzhou 22 spaceship on November 25th, tomorrow, from Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwestern China, the China Manned Space Agency said on Monday. And Indonesia destroyed 31 Chinese vessels caught fishing illegally, and this is how it happened. F around and find out. Now, Germany's Guard Battalion intensified training for urban combat to protect government infrastructure. They started in Berlin in subway or underground. Take a look. Good idea, because Russia is infamous for doing that. They did that to their own citizens in Moscow, blew up their metro. Namibia has Adolf Hitler. That is real. I'm not kidding here. That's though how he looks like. Adolf Hitler Unona will run again in November 26 elections after winning 85% in 2020. What a timeline. Finland confirmed plans to host a permanent NATO command unit linked to US-led operational system in Norfolk. This marks Finland's full integration as a northern NATO hub. A final decision is expected in February 2026. Now, a top Hezbollah military figure was killed in an Israeli strike in Beirut. Lebanon says Israel crossed a new red line, while Israel accuses Hezbollah of failing to uphold the ceasefire. And remarkably, Israel did not inform United States about this attack after, or did inform them after the fact. COP30 ended again with pledge to triple global adaptation funding by 2035, but without a roadmap to phase out fossil fuels. At the G20 summit in South Africa, leaders reaffirmed multilateral cooperation. Pretoria rejected a U.S. proposal for its representative to attend the presidency handover ceremony, prompting White House criticism. White House didn't send any representation, but they only wanted to send somebody for closing ceremony. Canada and India officially launched trade negotiations. Talks are continued with Vietnam and the EU as well. Severe flooding killed more than 90 people in Vietnam and at least 8 in Thailand, with hundreds of thousands displaced, exacerbated by La Nina conditions. And Bosnia's Serb Republic snap election produced a narrow win for Sinica Karan, a close ally of banned former Dodik. And the UK unveiled a new critical mineral strategy aiming to domestically produce 10% of its needs by 2035, backed by $65 million investment fund. And I want to end on a humanity note. Sometimes we watch those happy-go-lucky videos. And this one, though, is special. In Switzerland, there is a bus. And there's a driver who has become this sort of like a cherished local figure. It's a 62-year-old Sami Zumbrun who works the route between Brienz and Brünich Pass. He yodels for passengers every day. So he's a lifelong musician with several albums. He eventually became a bus driver and local legend. And in fact, many passengers willingly wait longer just to board his bus. And aren't we lucky? Here's how it all sounds like. Can you imagine starting your day or ending your day like that? That is something. Meanwhile, oh my goodness, Timmy, thank you. Thank you for giving us a world full of spin. You're the best analyst, and we're lucky to have you. Thank you so much. Oh my goodness, you didn't have to. Thank you, Timmy. Thank you, Tidy Whitey. I appreciate you. Guys, if you're not our Honest Plus member, please consider joining. We meet on Fridays for deep dives, and in fact, you can join our deep dives that we did cover, like Alaska and Arctic, and also the Shadow Fleet. We did dive into BlackRock and all their operations. So if you would love to join us Fridays, and then last Friday of the month, this month we met last week because of holidays, we meet on what is it now? Google Meet, where we answer questions and just chit chat with each other. So if you don't mind, this certainly will support whatever we do here. We're completely independent, and that's why I speak what I say, because I don't answer to anybody. Silence those who speak the truth. Right, Lynn? Yeah. What a joke. 2 weeks, a concept will be announced. Yeah. Stop asking him the same question. That's about Carney. Absolutely. Lies, and more lies. This was about the Russians. Yeah. Everything Trump does is a disaster. And again, Tidy Whitey, thank you so much. Thank you. And Lynn is laughing. Is it about the yodeling? Yeah. I mean, yes, I grew up in Germany, but I don't do the yodeling. Again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Again, I'll see you tomorrow. 6 p.m. works better. Why? Because Trump sometimes signs executive orders. Today, he signed an executive order proclaiming Muslim Brotherhood a terrorist organization. I have to die because it says certain subgroups of Muslim Brotherhood. I have to see what this is because. Okay, well, and then he also, for this week, he plans to also do executive order proclaiming that aliens exist. I'm not kidding you, and I'm not making this up. This is real. I guess it all comes together with what the Russia deal is, and he gave Zelensky deadline by Thursday. So I'm working 24/7, 365 because I choose so. So I will be doing the newsletters on Thursday and on Friday. If there are not so many news, I can pre-record and put out a video so you can, maybe listen to it while you are cooking or eating or whatever. And if not, you can rewatch it through the weekend, right after Thanksgiving and Black Friday, at least here in the United States. So, because we're a global community, I don't think that we will be skipping days because people want news, and you can catch up on the weekend. There will be also a video with the fabulous artist coming out this Wednesday. Kolinchi is an artist who is British but lives in France, and he does very cool installations. He came to New York. We recorded an interview, and there will be also like a QR thing where you can go and experience his art online. So be on the lookout for that as well. So again, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you. Aliens exist, but trans people don't, right? Linda, good point. I mean, and they exist by executive order, right? The aliens. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I truly, truly appreciate you. And where is my cover thing? Okay, here we go. And I'll see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern. Please join me here for another roundup of the actual news. Again, thank you for being here. Keep your hat on a swivel. Stay positive. It's a long run.